Hey church, let's get into it. We are in our series in the book of Psalms. We're trying to take these songs and prayers that have been written thousands of years ago and just see how they can be a resource to our lives of faith as we pursue Jesus. What would it look like to sing the same sort of songs that King David sang in his high moments and low moments, and pray the same kind of prayers. So the last couple weeks we've been going over the Messianic Psalms and just seeing how Jesus was the fulfillment of everything that they were hoping for. Every prayer was kind of carrying this same hope that they would be delivered, and they didn't know what the name of the deliverer was yet, but we know his name now. His name is Jesus Christ, and he came and died for us. So we're going through the 9 different types of psalms, and up this week is the testimonial psalms. Probably 15-20% of the psalms are what we would call testimonial psalms, and the essential feature of these psalms is that they're a declaration by the writer of what God has done for them, for him or her. And so these testimonial psalms usually have a note at the beginning about what context they were written in, what was the story behind it, and then they would write this song or prayer about how God has seen them through these times. And so the one that we're in this morning or this evening, depending on when you're watching this, is Psalm 34. You can get opened up there. We're going to read the whole thing in just a minute. What the Psalms teach us about God is several things. That he, if you take kind of the overview of the Psalms, we see that God provides our guidance, he provides our protection, he provides our nourishment, he provides our courage, he provides our discipline, he provides our blessings, he provides our sense of worth, he provides our eternal destiny. And so when we think about testimonial psalms, essentially what these are saying is that God provides those things, but we're seeing it through the lens of past tense. God has provided my guidance. God has provided my protection. God has provided our nourishment. Now this is in contrast to the lament psalms, which we'll get to next, which is, God, I need you to provide my guidance. I need you to provide my protection, my courage, my nourishment. So these are looking through the lens of, you have provided. That's why we call them testimonial. They're just acknowledging what he has done in the past. And the thing about seeing what God has done in the past is that it makes it easier to trust him with the future. Faith becomes easier as we look forward because of what we can see when we look back. It's easier to trust God with my tomorrow when I see that he was faithful yesterday, right? And so testimonial psalms, the way to pray our testimony, this is just a valuable way of seeing God has provided, God has a track record of being faithful, and because of that I can trust him with tomorrow. And so Psalm 34 is an interesting one. I want to give some of the context first, and then we'll pause and we'll read the psalm, and then we'll just break it down a little bit. So this psalm, it says in the footnote at the beginning of it, it was a psalm of David when he changed his behavior before Abimelech so that he drove him out and he went away. So the story here is that King David, before he was the king, was kind of in waiting in the court of King Saul. You might know the story. King Saul was the king. David defeated Goliath, and so Saul says, hey, why don't you come and stay with me and live with me? He had been anointed by the prophet Samuel. And David became best friends with Saul's son, Jonathan. They just had this like strong kinship. They backed each other up. And at one point, Saul, the king, starts to go crazy. Power can do this to people. He starts to get more concerned with protecting his throne and his power than anything else, and he starts to see David as a threat. He knows that God has anointed David as the next king, and Saul, it just drives him crazy. And so in 1 Samuel 20, he starts to plot to kill this kid. David's just a kid at this point, a teenager. And so he tries to kill David. David sniffs it out and decides not to show up at this banquet where this plot is going to unfold. Saul realizes that he's been discovered, and so he gets even more mad, and he tries to kill his own son, Jonathan. Chucks a spear at him, misses. Jonathan and David escape out into the wilderness, and Jonathan just goes, "Dude, you got to run." And so David runs to kind of a neighboring province or country called Gath. And it's this real low moment where he just kind of stumbles into this town. And if you read in 1 Samuel 21, the people are like, wait, is this David? Is this the guy that supposedly has killed tens of thousands of people? He's like a homeless person. And he gets captured by the king of Gath. The title for a king would be the Abimelech of Gath. And so he is captured, and in the moment that he's captured, he just realizes this is a lost cause. And the only way that I'm going to get out of here alive is to try a Hail Mary, just try something crazy. And so it says that he began to act crazy, began to like bang his head against the doorpost, and he's foaming at the mouth. And this king of Gath takes one look at him and is just like, we have enough crazy people. We don't need one more. Get him out of here. And so rather than capturing him and maybe killing him, he is set free by this kind of trick, this cunning move. And it's out of that context then that he writes Psalm 34, which is full of some of the most famous lines, some of the most famous sections of Psalms. So let's take a quick break. I want you guys to read through the whole Psalm together in your house church, and then so pause the film, and then you can restart it when you're done reading. Ready? Read it. Okay, so we've had a chance now to read the Psalm. I would encourage you, the beautiful thing about Psalms is that they stick in your head, kind of like a song does. And the reason that these have been the prayers of God's people throughout thousands of years is that there's some real beautiful lines in here. And so if you see a line in there that's meaningful to you, that you think you can memorize, just try, like, write it down and try to memorize that. Use it in your own prayers. So the first line like that we see is verse 4, which you might be familiar with. It says, "I sought the Lord, and He answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to Him are radiant, and their faces shall never be ashamed." I think this is a particularly funny line when it comes to the context of how this song was written, because David is going, "I sought the Lord and He answered me," and the way that He answered me was by telling me to act crazy. Sometimes God leads us in just weird ways. Sincerely though, the way that God guides our life sometimes is not what we would expect. But we got to realize that God is in control, even when it feels like nothing is in control. God is at work through small moments and big moments and moments that just feel lost. He's at work there. So I sought the Lord and He answered me. Verse 8 says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is him who takes refuge in Him." Even when my father-in-law is trying to kill me, even when when King Saul is trying to kill me, taste and see that the Lord is good. I can always find refuge in Him, even when I can't find refuge anywhere else. And so I think this is a really common perspective for us. We feel alone more often than we would admit. Depression is a bigger factor for most Christians than we're allowed to talk about. And the truth is, God is our refuge in those times. He doesn't ask us to pretend as though nothing is wrong, but God meets us in those quiet moments where we really don't have anywhere else to turn, and we turn to Him as our refuge. Taste and see that the Lord is good. I've my kids are of that age where they get a little picky when it comes to time to eat. Right in the morning, JM wants one thing and Bear wants another thing, and they're just gonna like argue about it. And then at dinner, they'll kind of look funny at whatever is different on their plate. You know, maybe they haven't tried mushrooms or something like that, and so they'll kind of pick at it. And you have to go, listen, just taste it, just one time, just taste. There are flavors here that you'll never experience if you don't just try it. Taste and see that it's good. And so I think the same should be applied to our relationship with God. The walk of faith that we're a part of is you just got to try it. You've got to be able to taste it. And what you'll find is that it's good and it's sustaining. It's something that you want again and again and again. But if you never try it even once, you'll never find that. And so David says, taste and see that the Lord is good. He is blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. So then he moves on to verse 11. He says, come, O children, and listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. And then he continues and gives his guidance to his children. What man is there who desires life and loves many days that he may see good? Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from deceit. Turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. I think it's interesting that in this testimonial psalm, when we're talking about the way that God has provided for us in the past, he says, children, come and look. Come and hear this story. Because not only is it an opportunity for us to teach ourselves, but it's an opportunity to teach our children and those who are observing our life. If you can see the way that God has been active in your past, that's an opportunity to teach somebody else. The best lessons are those that you don't have to learn for yourself. You can watch somebody else as they learn, right? But if you keep that to yourself, if you never use your testimony, your history as a teaching opportunity, it's a lost opportunity, because God uses those moments to teach our children and our friends. Don't miss the opportunity. We'll come back to that in just a second. And then finally, verse 22, it says, the Lord redeems the life of his servants. None of those who take refuge in him will be condemned. Redeem is a really loaded word. We use that a lot to refer to Jesus, but I don't think that many people understand the true meaning of it, which is has to do with like a purchase. When you redeem something, you trade your money for that thing that you want to possess. And so when we say that Jesus redeems us, we say that he paid his own blood and his own life in order to possess us, in order for us to be his. And this psalm says the Lord redeems, he buys, he purchases the life of his servants, and those who take refuge in him will not be condemned. This is David observing in his own life and in his own struggle just to survive in this terrible situation. He observes this life and he says, God is at work. God is purchasing me. God is protecting me for something. And so this is, like I say, a testimonial psalm. And before we get to discussion, I want to encourage you to take a moment and just realize the importance of having a testimony. Testimony is again a loaded word. We would use that to refer to a witness on a stand, right? You go into court and you put the witness up on the stand, and they're giving testimony at that point. They're trying to explain from their perspective, what did you see? What did you hear? Is this the person that did it? And testimony is just the opportunity to tell what you have experienced. And so a testimonial psalm was David saying, this is what I experienced, this is what I felt, taste and see that the Lord is good, even in the middle of that. But this teaches us the importance of having our own testimony, our own ability to just say, this is what I experienced, this is what I saw, this is what I heard, this is how the pieces came together. it's the opportunity when we talk about a testimony of faith. This is an opportunity to see God moving in your life. And so there's really two benefits to this. There's one, there's the benefit for your own sake as you get to know your testimony, and then there's the benefit for others. And so let's start with the testimony for others' sake. If you know your story of faith, this is who I was before I met Jesus, this is how I've changed since then, this is a situation where God has been faithful in my life, and He protected me here, and He watched out for me here, and He took care of our needs at this point. When you're able to tell that testimony, first of all, if you can tell that story to a non-believer, it's the only type of evangelism that can't be contested. No matter who you're talking to, if you say, this is what I've experienced, they can't say, nuh-uh, no you didn't, that's not true. How are they going to argue what you experienced? So first of all, it's an opportunity just to proclaim the goodness of God in your life that can't be argued. Nobody can contest that. Second, when we share our testimony with people that are already in the faith, there is this harmonizing effect and a humanizing effect. So these two things are separate. Harmonizing is the idea that there are multiple notes being played, and they all they make a melody together, right? And so as I get to share my testimony, and Adrienne shares her testimony, and Emily shares her testimony, what's happening is this harmonizing effect where you can see these stories being woven together and see that God is the maestro, the mastermind behind all of this. And then it's also humanizing in that when I listen to your story, it makes it a lot harder for me to hate you, right? Everybody's got people that it's just really hard to be around them. You don't want to work with them. You don't want to spend any more time with them than you need to. There's a really profound thing that happens when you just pause and say, tell me how you came to faith. Tell me how you met Jesus. Tell me how you and your spouse have chosen to follow Christ together. What was that like? And just ask questions and listen. Budget an hour for that kind of conversation. And what happens is that humanizes the person that you're talking to. Even if you don't like them, even if you don't have much in common, you have an opportunity to just go, man, God is good. God has been faithful. And it just brings brings that relationship to life. You can hear what they have walked through. And then finally, you can remind each other how He has been faithful. And so when your friend is going into a rough sea, a stormy patch of life, and you just know that there's going to be some faith required, if you know that friend's testimony enough to say, hey, listen, I remember the last time you were in the stormy seas, and this was how God provided for you. I remember the last time that you were nervous about how things were going to work out at your job, but God took you through that into an even better job, and so you can apply that into the future. You can help that person. This is a discipleship opportunity to say, I saw what happened last time, and I'm telling you, God was faithful then, and He'll be faithful now. It's an opportunity to build each other up. And so being able to know your testimony and share your testimony, and within the context of a house church where there's no hiding, you can just be honest and go, listen, today is a low moment for me. You guys have been with me in my high moments. You have been with me in my low moments, and today I need support. But by sharing that testimony, we give each other the opportunity to minister. Everybody gets involved in our lives, and it's a beautiful thing. It's God's plan for the church to bear one another's burdens. But then, so there's the importance of a testimony for other people, but there's also the importance of a testimony for yourself. The importance of knowing your own story and knowing, hey, God was faithful through this moment and this trial. He was right there, and this was the time that I thought things weren't going to work out, but He was faithful in my sickness or in my grief. I think that knowing your own testimony can be fuel for growth. It's a little bit like going to the gym. If you don't track how many reps you can do at a certain weight, you'll never know when you're growing, right? You'll never know when you're getting stronger. If you all you do is just lay down and pump out as many as fast as you can, and then like move on, and you're not taking notes or anything like that, you could go months without it realizing a change, and then you'd get disheartened and you'd quit. But if every day you're going, listen, I did 15 reps at 135 pounds, and then next week I'm doing 20 reps at 135 pounds, you go, this is growth. And in the same way, when we know our testimony, and I know, listen, 2 years ago, I could barely move because of all the like depression, all of the expectations that I felt like people had on me. And in the last 2 years, I've seen God work through that. I'm not on the other side of it yet, but He's at work, and I'm tracking my growth. That can be really powerful, just to keep you in the fight, just so that you don't get discouraged and quit. So knowing your own testimony for the sake of your growth. Number 2, knowing your own testimony as fuel for prayer and worship. Like, if I can, in my prayers, I can go, God, I remember when our furnace quit and we didn't know how we were going to pay for it, and then the guy comes out and installs it, and he says, I just need you to sign here. Somebody else already paid for it. Are you kidding me? But God, you were faithful. Thank you, Lord. I know that you are for me. This is how you have shown me that you are for me. And so knowing our testimony is fuel for our prayers and for our worship. And negative testimony, going, Lord, I know that I've wandered. This was where I was when you came and found me, and this is where I'll be if you ever leave me. And so that becomes this kindling that we throw onto the fire of our worship and our prayer, where we go, God, you have been faithful in the past. And so because of that, I can worship and I can pray. My heart is in it because I've seen the way that you have cared for me. When you see how He has been faithful in the past, it makes it easier to trust Him with the future. And this is the definition of faith, being able to trust God with my future. As we get better at seeing how He was faithful in the past, it gets easier to practice faith for the future. As we can tell that testimony, God walked me through this. If I hadn't had a church family to lean on, if God hadn't been working through these circumstances or speaking to me through these scriptures, I wouldn't have made it through. But knowing that testimony makes it easier to like sail into more stormy seas, knowing, listen, God is going to get me through. And so as we go through the Psalms, we see that David or the sons of Korah or Asaph were just constantly doing this. God, you were faithful. This was the spot that I was in. I thought that I would never get through, but because you were faithful, here I am. This is a testimony. Over the next couple weeks, I'm going to bug some of you, and I want to have the opportunity to record your testimony. I'm going to take this camera that I'm speaking into right now. I'm going to show up at your house, and we're just going to record, like, this is what God has been doing in my life lately. And not all of them are going to be super positive. I mean, some of us are going to have to say, I feel like I'm in the middle of a dry spell right now. I feel like I know God is there, but I'm just constantly trying to find Him. But we're going to tell that faithfully and truly, believing that in being honest with one another, this testimony is going to come to bear fruit in the future. That 6 months from now, or a year from now, or 5 years from now, I'll be able to look back at this video and go, I was in a dry spell there. I was wandering in the desert, but God was still faithful. God was still there. And now I'm on the other side of it, and I can rejoice, and I can pray, and I can worship, because God has been good. God has been good. So, we've got some discussion questions for you here in your house churches. I'm just encouraged by this church. I love you guys. I'm encouraged to see what sort of life change is coming in your lives. And so I'm praying for you. Keep it up. Keep up with your prayer pact in your house churches. Let's touch base on that. And praying for your discussion today. Get to it. You're not dismissed, but you are sent.